This is the fourth and final segment of the Masterpiece Theater series. Things I need to know, things I really need to know before I sell real estate. Trapdoors, which are well marked, and yet I see people falling through them all the time. We're going to try to prevent people from falling through those trapdoors, which are surrounded by police tape and warning signs and everything else. The next trapdoor, I'm a seller. What should I expect in terms of receiving money at closing? Now, by and large, in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, it is entirely reasonable for a seller to expect to leave the closing with a check in hand or with the understanding that they are going to receive their proceeds in the form of a wire transfer. That is a reasonable expectation, but it's not universally possible. So let's explain how and why that expectation may be undermined. A couple of things. First of all, before any title company or real estate attorney can physically hand a seller a check. Now, Massachusetts and New Hampshire are different. We may not be able to get to those differences, so let's focus on New Hampshire because that's where I'm sitting right now. I'm sitting in New Hampshire. The only way a real estate attorney or a title company representative can hand a seller a check at a closing in New Hampshire is if they are funded. What does that mean? You hear that a lot. Are we funded? The realtors know what it means. Loan officers know what it means. To the loan officers, according to loan officers, we're always funded. We were funded months ago. We were funded a year ago. And I get that. That's an internal communication between the loan officer and their mortgage company. And somebody says to the other, yeah, we're funded. But funded in real estate means the title company or the real estate attorney can physically see that money in their account. Like the mortgage company has sent it and we've received it and it's posted. So when I look in online banking, I can actually see that funding. I can see an incoming wire from Acme Mortgage Company or Acme Credit Union. That's part of funding. What's the other part? The other part is the buyer's money. Now, when the buyer hands me a certified check at a closing table, or I've already received their wire, then I am funded as to the buyer. And when I have the wire from the mortgage company, and that's always going to be a wire transfer from a mortgage company, now I am fully funded. Once I am fully funded, I can fearlessly hand that check to the seller at the closing and tell them to have a nice life. Thank you very much for doing business with us. What can interfere with that sort of overly optimistic and rosy outlook? Well, if we're not funded. Now, why might we not be funded? Well, we might not be funded if there is a hiccup with the buyer, which we talked about actually in video 1, cash to close. The buyer didn't bring a certified check to the closing, or the buyer hasn't sent the wire transfer yet. Now we don't have the buyer's money. We're not funded. That's a problem. Why else may we not be funded? Because we don't have the mortgage company's wire yet. That sometimes can be the case with an early morning closing. In my experience, as long as we're talking about wire transfers and funding, they are almost universally sent by the mortgage company or lending institution for the buyer on the day of the closing. I wish they would send it to us a week in advance or 2 weeks ago, but that's just not the way our business operates. That money is typically released on the day of the closing and hopefully received by the attorney or title company on the day of the closing. So if we're doing a closing at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning and you're a seller and you're planning on getting on a plane or getting in a car and driving away, you should not reasonably expect that we are funded at that point because in my experience, these wire transfers are typically initiated at 10 a.m. and hopefully received sometime shortly thereafter, 10:30, 11, sometimes even later. But there's no reason to panic. And again, I think that's where expectations come in. I sometimes, and I've seen it all, I've seen sellers that'll basically, they won't even leave the room until they can have a check. Well, that can create a problem, obviously, if we're not funded and people are camping out or people are basically sort of refusing to leave the title company or refusing to leave the law firm. Now, we can only educate people to a point. There are people that are going to be distrustful of banks. There are people that are going to be distrustful of the process. Then they don't trust the process enough to say, hey, I'm sure that that money will be ready when it's ready, and let me know and I'll come by and I'll pick up my check. Now, what can we do as a half measure to make people feel better about this process and have them trust it more? I typically am comfortable releasing the check for a seller into the custody of their real estate agent or their attorney with an understanding that they're going to hold that check until we are funded. And that is usually, by the way, for people that are curious, that day. I cannot recall as I sit here a single instance, and we do a fair number of real estate closings, where we were not funded on the day of the closing. Now, sometimes we're funded late, and that can create problems and drama and apprehension, because people will start to wonder, what's wrong? Why don't they have the money yet? Is there something wrong with the buyer? Is there something wrong with the closing? Have I sold my property or haven't I? So that's an issue. Here's another issue: people that are selling and buying on the same day. Now, we can't outlaw that, nor should we. Many transactions by design have to be that way. People are literally selling, and they are moving from the property they are selling to the property that they are buying. So those properties will have to occur on the same day. And more often than not, we will be able to close on the sale, be funded, and wire those proceeds to the next attorney or the next title company in the chain. Happens all the time. But this video is important, I think, because we still have people that have some level of misunderstanding about funding and what it means and how important it is that we need to be funded before we can release funds. And we usually are. So this is a video that I think really doesn't apply to as broad a cross-section of people in real estate as perhaps some of the other videos, because on so many transactions, we are funded at the time of the closing. We do release checks at the closing, and there's no discussion of this issue whatsoever. But if you are selling real estate and you walk into the closing and you hear somebody at the title company or real estate attorney level say, by the way, we're not funded yet. And I will always do that, by the way. I would close on this note. I'm very clear and very honest and transparent when I am having people sign documents at the closing and I am not funded. Now, not everybody loves this, but I will say at the outset of the closing, before anybody's pen has hit the paper, by the way, just so everybody knows, we're not funded yet. I'm not worried about it. We'll probably be funded by the time the closing is over. But I don't want to be in the position of having somebody go through the closing process, sign the deeds, sign their lives away, so to speak, and then inform them at the end of the closing, oh, and by the way, did I tell you we're not funded yet? I think you have to be very, very honest and clear with people as to whether you're funded or not. Even recently, I was involved in a closing where somebody really wasn't transparent about that. And then afterwards, it was chalked up to miscommunication. I was representing the seller in that closing. I didn't love it. I didn't love it because I think I asked a direct question and I didn't really get a direct and transparent answer to that question. And then afterwards, it was chalked up to confusion. Oh, I didn't know you meant funded. I thought you meant, like, was it approved by the bank? No, I meant, were we funded? So that's what being funded is all about. Very important part of this process. And if you are selling real estate and you're not able to leave the room with a check, don't panic. I wouldn't assume that there's anything wrong or amiss. It may just be that the title company or attorney isn't funded yet. And now hopefully you know a little bit more about that and its implications and what it means.